Hey everybody, welcome. Sports and shorts of sorts. I'm Ren City Ricky. Swap right to it, guys. Let's get right into our Jersey segment here. Yeah, first person I think of when number 34 is a guy that, you could have used for number 32 or number 33. I'm talking about a guy who has so many nicknames. Superman, Diesel, the Big Aristotle, Big Shamrock. I'm talking about Shaquille O'Neal. Larger than life character, unstoppable force on basketball court or in the rap studio, beast at LSU, player of the year accolades there. His number 33 is retired. He's got a bronze statue outside the practice facility. Crazy. Number one, obviously, in the draft to the Magic. He wanted to wear 33, but Terry Catledge refused to relinquish the jersey. So he wore 32 there. He won Rookie of the Year. First rookie to be in that All Star game since Michael Jordan had done it. So pretty good. When he teamed up with Penny Hardaway, you're like, man, this team's going to win some titles. And they look like title contenders. They went to the 95 finals and they'd lose to the Houston Rockets, so that was rough. But then Shaq would go win a gold medal with the USA in '96, and then he said he's going to leave free agency maybe. And the tipping point was in the Orlando newspaper. They had a poll questioning if Shaq was worth 115 million, and 91% said he wasn't. So Shaq was like, I'm out. So then he'd go to the Lakers where he'd wear 34 because Magic Johnson had retired 32, as we had mentioned on this show, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on our last episode, number 33. So Shaq dominated in the number 34. And then once he got paired with, you may have heard of this guy, Kobe Bryant, they'd go on to win three in a row. Call it the three-peat. They also got Phil Jackson. That really helped too, obviously. But yeah, Shaq won Finals MVP for each one of those titles. It's weird to think that he only has one regular season one in 2000. But maybe ask him about Steve Nash's MVPs and see what he thinks. But after the three-peat end, he wanted a trade. He'd go to the Miami Heat and win a title with Dwayne Wade. So Shaq's numbers are pretty ridiculous. 15-time All-Star, 3 All-Star MVPs, 14 All-NBA, 3 All-NBA defensive teams. He won a scoring title in Orlando and as well as LA. And when it was all said and done, Shaq played for the Magic, Lakers, Heat, Suns, Cavs, and Celtics. Like I said, his 33 is retired at LSU, 32 is retired in Orlando, 34 is retired as a Laker. And he's obviously in the College and Basketball Hall of Fame and the FIBA Hall of Fame. But next 34, this is the guy who trumped Shaq in those Houston Rockets finals. I'm talking about Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. Nigerian-born Olajuwon learned the game later in life. He traveled from Nigeria to play at the University of Houston, where fine-tuned his game, playing with Moses Malone, who was an NBA MVP. He played with him in the summer. And, he played with Clyde Drexler at the University of Houston. They become a powerhouse, like I mentioned in episode 22 with Clyde Drexler's number. They had the nickname the Phi Slamma Jamma, first slam dunk in fraternity. But they never won a national championship. They were involved with one of the biggest upsets ever when North Carolina State, and the other loss was the Patrick Ewing and Georgetown. But Olajuwon still would go number one, and he'd lead the Rockets to greatness, leading back-to-back championships, winning finals in both those series. Like I said, the one over Shaq and the Magic. But there was some saying, well, maybe if Michael Jordan didn't play baseball, would they be able to beat the Rockets? And a lot are saying, I don't know, the way Akeem was playing at that time, who was going to guard them, I don't know, like Luke Longley is a good center, but Akeem, he was something else this season. He won Defensive Player of the Year 2 years in a row. He was part of the U.S. Olympic team in '96. He did finish his career in a Raptors jersey, which was just kind of weird to look at, but a lot of people go to Hakeem in the offseason to look at ways to fine tune their game. His dream shake, still regarded one of the smoothest post moves around. Look it up; it's fun to watch. His 34 is retired by the University of Houston as well as the Houston Rockets. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame as well as the FIBA Hall of Fame. And sticking with the same era, my next mention was a teammate of Hakeem's at one point, and he's a regular with Shaq on TNT. Talking about the round mound rebound, Charles Barkley. We all love Charles Barkley on TV. It was terrible. It was terrible. But yeah, he was dominant in Auburn University, despite being a heavy guy. You know, we've all been there. We've had weight issues before, but still, he's SC Player of the Year. His number 34 is retired at Auburn. You go fifth overall of the Sixers, and he had all the talent, and there were tons of vets there. And then Moses Malone just told Barkley flat out, "You're too fat, man." And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, you're too fat." And then under the tutelage of Malone, he helped to up his game and do what he needed to do to become a better player. And he wore 34 doing it. He wore 32 his last year in Philly to honor Magic Johnson after he had announced he had contracted HIV. But yeah, his play on the court was amazing. He was so aggressive, but he was aggressive off the court. You know, he's known for famously spitting on a fan who was heckling him with racial slurs, but he missed the fan and hit a young girl. He was fined and suspended for that. And yeah, it would kind of leave a mark on him his whole career, even on TV. He apologized for it, obviously, but that he'd get traded to the Phoenix Suns, and this would be the closest to the NBA championship he'd have. In his first year, they go 62-20. Barkley would win MVP, and then they'd meet some guy named Michael Jordan in the finals. And you know what happens with that? Despite Barkley's amazing play, like if you're like, oh, he's just a funny guy on TV, watch how he played in that season with the Suns. It's pretty amazing, and he'd make a last ditch effort for all the times he shits on people, you know, ring chasing. I mean, this was the end of his career, but he joined the Houston Rockets to try to make it with Olajuwon and Drexler, but they lose in the Western Conference Finals to the Utah Jazz, and yeah, it was a tough loss, but he'd never get that ring. He was part of the Dream Team in '92 in those Olympics and the '96 Olympics, and he made 11 All-Star games, MVP in '91, All-Star MVP in '91. Sorry, he was 11 All NBA teams. His number 34 is retired by the Sixers. He's in the College and Basketball Hall of Fame, and like I said, he does great work on TNT. Him, Shaq, Kenny, and Ernie. There's no one better on TV than those guys. And instead of sticking with more classics, we'll go with someone a current guy, number 34, Giannis Antetokounmpo, 28 years old, already a Hall of Fame career, two-time MVP. He's got a championship on my NBA prediction show. I have him winning a second one this year. He won the Finals MVP with the first one, seven-time All-Star MVP in 21. He's made seven All NBA teams, five All NBA defensive teams. He won Defensive Player of the Year in 2020. He's won Most Improved Player. He's drafted 15th overall, string bean of a player, and he showed you what you could do in the gym. He is total different looking player, but he's just going to get better. Look at these numbers grow by him. The pairing with him and Damian Lillard. Wow. What a move. But yeah, next number 34, the jersey I'm wearing right now, Paul Pierce, you know, the truth. He's a beast at Kansas, you know, being one of the fifth leading scorer in Kansas Jayhawk history. And you know how deep Kansas history is. His number 34 is retired there. He dropped to number 10 in the draft, which would piss him off. And being a guy from Inglewood, California, it was tough to get drafted by the Celtics, a team, you know, you're growing up in California, you're not usually cheering for the Celtics. Him and Antoine Walker would have some pretty good years together. Love watching Antoine Walker chuck up those threes, but never get over the hump. They had to make a move. We didn't know what to do. Got wild with it. They made the original, well, not original, but some people call them an original big three, getting Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, bringing that team together. They'd make the finals, you know, having the rivalry with the Lakers. Celtics would end up winning their 17th championship. Paul Pierce was finals MVP. Then 2 seasons later, the same teams meet in the final, and this time Kobe would win. So yeah, it was a really good rivalry between two teams that have tons of history. But he ended up playing with the Nets, Wizards, and Clippers before retiring. And a lot of people hate on Paul Pierce now. You know, his little debate with him and do I have a better career than Dwayne Wade? But man, this guy could ball out. He was the truth for a reason. You know, Finals MVP, 10-time All Star, 4 All NBA teams, first Celtic since Larry Bird to win the 3-point contest in 2010. So yeah, his 34 is retired by the Celtics, which is, excuse me, always a huge deal. And yeah, he's in the College and Basketball Hall of Fame. So amazing player. And yeah, one last baller I'll mention here. He played with Paul Pierce, and he wore 20 during that time, but I will remember number 34. You might remember from the movie He Got Game, he was Jesus Shuttleworth. I'm talking about Ray Allen. You know, second all-time three-point made list behind Stephen Curry. He's a beast at University of Connecticut, where the Huskies retired his jersey. He was a part of a really, I thought, a fun big three to watch with Sam Cassell and Big Dog Glenn Robinson. They made it to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals in 2001 before losing to Allen Iverson and the Sixers. And yeah, shit got involved with George Karl and Ray Allen potentially, where he got moved to Seattle, and he had a good dynamic duo with Rashard Lewis, where they had some good playoff runs. But then, like I mentioned before, with the big move to Boston with Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce already there, they'd end up winning a title. But man, Ray Allen, 10 All Star games, two All NBA teams. He's in the Hall of Fame. And then two other 34s we'll throw out there: Charles Oakley, Terry Cummings, physical dudes. Jump into the NFL. I could have started with this guy. Number 34 that outshines the rest. Sweetness. Walter Payton. Some regard him as the best running back ever. You know, he's drafted fourth out of an HBCU, Jackson State. And he went on some hard times before, you know, the Bears went on hard times before drafting Peyton, sorry, and he shined right out the gate. You know, nine Pro Bowls, eight All Pros. He's got a record for most consecutive starts by a running back at 170. His best year was in 77 when he won NFL MVP and Offensive Player of the Year, leading the league in rushing and touchdowns. And his best year as a team, I guess, was when the Bears won the Super Bowl in 20. You know, you might remember the song, The Super Bowl Shuffle, but that summarizes the 80s in one music video. But when he retired, he was the all-time leader in rushing yards before Emmitt Smith would break that record later on. But the NCAA gives out the Walter Payton Award to the best offensive player from a Div 1 school. But in retirement, it was announced Peyton had a rare liver disease, and this led to bile duct cancer, and he'd passed away 46 years old and like too young. 34 is retired by the Bears, and he's in the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. Yeah, sad way to go though. But sticking with running backs, I've mentioned one of the hardest ones ever, one of the hardest hitting ones ever. Earl Campbell. He wore a 20 in college, winning the Heisman, but when you go to the Houston Oilers, now Tennessee Titans, even though they wore those sweet jerseys this weekend, they'd pick him first overall, and he'd be a beast out of the gate. Offensive Rookie of the Year. And during this 3 year window, he'd get 3 Offensive Player of the Year awards and an MVP. His 34 is retired by the Titans franchise, and he's in the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. Like, he was only 9 years doing this because of the way he ran the ball. It was so physical. It would lead him becoming addicted to painkillers after the NFL. But like, this is some hard hitting stuff. If you watch his games, it's you feel the pain just watching him. And another great back I'll mention, he sits 16th all time in the NFL rushing list. Thurman Thomas, beast at Oklahoma State. His 34 is retired there. And he was part of those Buffalo Bills teams, those tough Bills teams that made it to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row and lost all 4 times. I mean, that's still tough to do, but yikes, not always ideal. But yeah, 5 time Pro Bowler, won the MVP and NFL Player of the Year '91. That's pretty amazing. He's 34 is retired with the Bills, and he's in the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. Last football mentioned, he was a great back of his generation, maybe a little misunderstood, but Ricky Williams. You know, he was fifth overall. The Saints gave up all those picks to get him when Mike Ditka was there. He never really reached the potential until he went to Miami, and he was leading the league in rushing, getting all first team all pro accolades, but then he kept failing pot tests, you know. Fine after fine. This inspired a movie, a documentary, sorry, 30 for 30, Run Ricky Run. It's really good. And yeah, he was trying holistic medicine. He was out of the league with pot, and then he had to come back and apologize to the league and serve a 4 game suspension for the drug test fail. And he'd have one more 1,000 yard season after that, but he didn't come back the same. But he sits 31 all time on the list of rushing yards. His 34 is retired at Texas, and he's in the College Football Hall of Fame because his college numbers, they are something else. We're going to the baseball diamond. You got to talk Nolan Ryan. Some say the greatest pitcher ever just based on longevity and durability. And he's got records that maybe never broken, playing 27 seasons in the big league with 4 different franchises. He's got his 30 retired with the Angels, but his 34 is retired with the Astros and Rangers. So the big Texan made 8 All-Star games in his career, led the league in strikeouts 11 times. Big part of his game, his 5,714. No one's touching that. The next person behind him, Randy Johnson, he's 839 behind. Closest active player, Max Scherzer, and he's a few thousand behind. So Despite all his accolades, it's pretty amazing. He never won a Cy Young or pitched a perfect game, but he does have 49 other MLB records. And I watched this documentary, Facing Nolan. Highly recommend it. It was really good. And sticking with MLB pitchers, Roland Roly Fingers, one of the cooler nicknames around. But his relief pitching kind of helped revolutionize the relief pitcher position. And he won the Rolaids Relief Man Award 4 times, which is such a cool name for an award, I still think. 7 All-Star games, won AL Cy Young and AL MVP in 81. Very important part of those Oakland Athletics teams that won 3 straight World Series. His 34 is retired by the A's and Brewers franchise, and of course in the Hall of Fame. Next player, Kirby Bucket, legend in the state of Minnesota, spent his whole career there, bringing them their only 2 World Series, including ALCS MVP in the '91 title run. Make 10 All-Star games, 6 Gold Gloves, 6 Silver Sluggers. It was pretty amazing, but it was kind of rough how he had to retire. He spent the time rehabbing an injury, then he woke up without vision in his right eye. He was diagnosed with glaucoma, and he could never regain vision in that eye. He had to retire at 36, you know. Then at 45, he suffered a stroke, underwent surgeries, but they couldn't save him. So just days before his 46th birthday, he passed away. But his legacy lives on in Minnesota. His 34 is retired by the Twins. He's in the Hall of Fame. And the last baller I'll mention here, David Ortiz, Big Poppy, loved in Boston, member of the 3 World Series teams, including that 2004 one that broke the Bambino curse. So, after they had traded Babe Ruth back in the day, only, I don't know, an 86-year championship drought. But he started his career in Minnesota with 27, but we all know him for his time in Beantown. Winning the MVP in 2013, World Series MVP, sorry. 10 All-Star games, 7 Silver Sluggers. At 34 is retired by the Red Sox, and he's in the Hall of Fame. And in hockey, the main one I can think of here, number 34 for the Leafs, Austin Matthews, the American-born sniper, is one of the best scorers in the game. Just turned 26 in September. He's already got one hell of a resume. 6-time All-Star, Calder Trophy, 2 Rocket Richard trophies, and he's got 1 Memorial Hart Trophy and 1 Ted Lindsay. His next goal is the Stanley Cup, though. He's got to bring one to Canada, bring one to Toronto. Toronto hasn't won since 1967, so no pressure. And then 2 other 34s I'll mention are in the net. You got John Van Beesbrook, long career with the Rangers and the Panthers, winning the Vezina as a Ranger in '86, and Mika Kiprusoff with the Calgary Flames, winning the Vezina in 2006. He was part of that title with the team that made it to the Stanley Cup to lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning. But wow, long jersey segment there. Let's jump right into the show. Going back to Monday Night Football last week, the way it ended, 49ers taking on the Vikings, I could not have called that one more wrong. I thought Cousins would choke in a big game. He did not. The Niners did. Kirk went out and went crazy. I still won my fantasy game. I needed him to have a bad game. He played well. I only won by 2 points, but give credit to the Vikings. They went in and they were in that one, showed the 49ers that maybe they're not all that good. We'll see, but that was the end of last week. We jumped into the Thursday nighter. You had the Bills and Bucks, and the Bills would have tons of opportunities to get a touchdown, but the Bucks bend don't break defense would hold up, but they would eventually break. And despite Josh Allen going into the tent briefly, the Bills would come out on top on this one, taking the win at home. Then Sunday, you had a game that was very, very weird. Not a lot of scoring. Brees Hall took a deep one between the Jets and the Giants. But you had Giants backup Tyrod Taylor, who was in for Daniel Jones, leave the game to injury. So you had Tommy, don't call me Danny DeVito, come in. He scored a touchdown run that put the Giants up ahead late. They had a late field goal to ice it, and Gano missed it. You're like, what? What is happening? And then Zach Wilson, who sucked all game, finally put together a drive, and they force overtime where they'd win. Like the Giants, oh man, I don't know how you lost that one, but they did. So I guess credit to the Jets. Do you give them credit there? I don't know. But then you had the Jaguars and Steelers. This was a pretty wild one. You had another quarterback leaving in this one. Kenny Pickett would have to leave. Trevor Lawrence would do enough for the Jags, and Mitch Trubisky would try to bring the Steelers back, but it wouldn't be enough. The Jags would take that one. Then you had the Eagles and Commanders, and the Commanders, anytime they're in a division game, they look pretty damn good. Howell had 2 first-half touchdowns and a 61-yard field goal by Joey Sly had the Commanders leading at halftime. And then in the second half, it would be touchdown city. Jalen Hurts would hit Brown for his second of the game before Howell would answer to Thomas. And then Hertz would hit Devontae Smith for a big one. And then Julio Jones would get his first touchdown as an Eagle. And then the Eagle did an interesting play. We know the tush push, brotherly shove, call it what you want to call it. They had it set up before doing a sneaky handoff to Swift, who would score. Howell will get his fourth touchdown of the game later, but it wasn't enough. Eagles held on in a very tight game. And then you had the Rams and the Cowboys. And if you were a Rams fan, this was ugly. If you're a Cowboys fan, you're probably already planning a Super Bowl parade. Because Dak looked good. Looked really good. 3 first half touchdowns, 2 to CeeDee Lamb, and 1 to Jake, don't call me Turd Ferguson. And you combine that with a bland pick six, and Rams were up big, if it wasn't for a Ben Skoranek touchdown in the second half to make it a little more interesting, it could have been even uglier. And Stafford left the game in this one. Brett Rippon would have to come in and finish it. Big win for the Cowboys. Divisional matchup in the NFC North between my Packers and the Vikings, and hoping Love would bounce back, but he did not. It was not very good for the Packers. Kirk Cousins was killing us. And then sadness, disappointment would strike for the Vikings. Like Kirk Cousins, it's a look Achilles injury, ruptured Achilles. Like he's gonna be gone for the year. They said Monday they do more testing today, but I don't see him. I think it's similar to Aaron Rodgers. He's gonna be gone. You could tell by the team's vibe. Like people were heartbroken. They were almost in tears over it. It was tough. We'll see what the Vikings do going forward because they were just turning their season around. It looks like Jaron Hall came in to finish the game, but I don't know what their future or their decision or their moves to end the season going forward. Like I said, they were just turning around. You feel for Kirk, especially watching that quarterback show on Netflix. Like he seems like a good dude. You're just like, ugh, injuries, hate him. But I mentioned earlier in the show the Houston Oilers jerseys and the Titans were rocking them for throwback, and they were throwing Will Levis in there. First NFL start, and he looked like Warren Moon in those bad boys, bombing a 47-yarder DeAndre Hopkins before hitting Hopkins again in the second. Then he'd hit Hopkins on another bomb in the third. It was crazy. Desmond Ritter was playing so bad that, he got a concussion, and they were just like, you know what, take this one out. Like he passed protocol, but he was benched and brought in Heineke, who played pretty well. He brought the Falcons back in the game, and it wasn't until Levis would hit Westbrook Akini for his fourth touchdown pass of the game to give them the win. So good job on the Titans. I think they know their quarterback going forward. Maybe the Falcons do too. Maybe the Desmond Ritter time has come to an end, and bring on the Taylor Heineke. Have a few Heineke with the boys. But New England Patriots and Dolphins, like Mac Jones hit Bourne early, and you're like, hey, maybe the Patriots got this. But then Tua Tagovailoa would hit Tyreek Hill on a massive bomb, and then Cedric Wilson would score, and it was closer than it really felt. Like the Dolphins, I don't really felt ever in danger in this one, and they beat the Patriots, who continue to struggle. Saints and Colts was a real fun one. Both teams looking to avenge losses the week prior, and tons of scoring in the first half. You had the Saints leading 21-20, and then 2 touchdowns, one by Kamara, one by Taysom Hill, would you think put the game out of reach, and then Minshew would hit Ogletree on a wild scramble to make things a little closer, but Saints take that one. Derek Carr looked a lot better in this game too. Then you had the Carolina Panthers hosting the Houston Texans, number 1 draft picks, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Stroud was able to sneak in the third to give the Texans a 1-point lead, and you're like, oh, Panthers going to lose it again. But, Young led him down the field. A few penalties prolonged the game a bit before Eddie Pinheiro would hit a chip shot to give the Panthers their first win of the year and give Bryce Young his first win of his career. And it's kind of tough to see these guys playing a lot. They're in 2 different conferences. We'll see what the schedulers do in the offseason to make it work. But, yeah, I don't think the Panthers and Texans play that often. But we'll see. The Seahawks and Browns game was pretty good. You had Jake Bobo scoring again. The rookie's looking pretty good. Tyler Lockett got a pass from Geno, and you're like, Seahawks soaring. But then P.J. Walker would hit Joku, bring the Browns back a bit. Second half, or in the second quarter, Hunt would score again, and Seattle had a small lead at half, but after a few Browns field goals, looked like, hey, maybe the Browns are going to take this. And Geno was making bad plays, but then P.J. Walker would make bad plays, leading the Geno, hitting Smith and Jigba for a winning touchdown with 38 seconds left. Seahawks somehow pulled that one out, but good on them. Then you had the Bengals and the Niners. Joe Montana was in attendance to watch his former team. and many compare Joe Burrow to him. And two first half touchdowns from Burrow, you were thinking, hey, is that Montana? And then he'd hit Jamar Chase for another before McCaffrey would get his second of the game. In that score, he'd tie the record for most consecutive games with a touch or with a score. He's at 17 now. Pretty amazing streak right there. But then Burrow would lead his team down the clock before Mixon did some high stepping into the end zone and ended the game. So pretty big win there. Pretty big. And I picked up Joe Burrow in a trade. Definitely pumped about that in fantasy. I have Aaron Rodgers on IR. I was using Danny Jones before Matthew Stafford, so pretty big pickup getting Joe Burrow. I think he's on the way to turning his season around and maybe getting his name in the MVP talk. I don't see a lot of people talking about Purdy in the MVP talk after this 49ers game, that's for sure. But probably the biggest shock of the NFL weekend was the Chiefs and Broncos. Like, divisional games are usually close, but not like this. Costly turnovers by the Chiefs everywhere, from muffed punts, sorry, to Mahomes interceptions. It's like, what's going on here? To drops. Well, the Chiefs have had a lot of drops this year, but Russell, last name Wilson, he'd do his thing. He'd have three touchdown passes, this 114 yards, so nothing to shake a stick at, but he did what they had to. Mahomes still, despite all this, on fourth down, would hit Sky Moore right in the hands, but Moore would not catch it. And that was on fourth down, kind of was their last ditch effort. And in this big Broncos win, they'd end some streaks for Mahomes. This is the first division loss at home for Mahomes, and the Broncos broke their 16-game losing streak against the Chiefs. So get on the Broncos. I did not see that coming. The Ravens and Cardinals had no business being close. The Ravens were up 31-15, under 3 minutes to go. Then a quick score by Hollywood Brown, and it was a real bad effort on the 2-point conversion, which would have made it a one possession game. But then the Cardinals would get the onside kick on an amazing kick right into the ground, would pop up. They'd get it right away, get a field goal, but you're not going to get two onside kicks in a row and they'd lose that game. Then the Sunday nighter, you had Tyson Bagent, man. He's starting for the Bears, and the Div 2 quarterback didn't look as good as he did in game one. The Chargers, on the other hand, looked great. Justin Herbert had a big old bandage on that finger, better than the glove he was wearing the day before, as they were talking about a bunch. But, yeah, Chargers did their thing, looked better, took the win pretty easily. And that leaves a Monday night game. You have the Raiders and the Lions, both teams looking to bounce back. Raiders were ran over by the Bears last week, and the Lions failed to live up to that hype in their big battle against the Ravens. But Jimmy Garoppolo will be back for the Raiders, and I don't think he'll really do much. The Lions will come back with a roar. I see this being a very lopsided victory for Detroit. And then we'll go to baseball. The ACLS, you had those magical words, Game 7. Max Scherzer going out there. I doubted him a bit, but he did all right, better than Christian Javier. The Rangers got to him early, and like Fred Durst kept rolling, ended up winning 11-4 to go to the World Series. First time since 2011, and only their third appearance ever for the Texas Rangers. Adolis Garcia, of course, won ALCS MVP. I don't know if I even said that right earlier, but ALCS. Jeez, ready. But yeah, he won the MVP of that series for his amazing play and his constant home runs. But after the Astros loss, a few days later, it was announced Dusty Baker will be retiring from managing baseball. 26 years doing the job. He came out of retirement in 2020 to help lead this Astros out of that cheating scandal, and he helped them to two World Series, including winning one last year. So a great guy in baseball. Sad to see him go, but he'll probably be hanging around baseball in some aspect. And then you go to the NLCS. Said that one right. Phillies going home with two chances to advance to the World Series. Game 6, not so hot. They lose 5-1. Game 7, the crowd's rocking. You had Diamondbacks rookie pitcher Brandon Pfaadt out there, 12th rookie to start a Game 7 in the playoffs, and he did great. You had Ranger Suarez for the Phillies. He didn't do that bad either. You had a pretty close game. You had Marte getting a hit and setting the record for longest streak to start your postseason, 16 in a row. And then while the Diamondbacks had the lead, they bring in Sewell, the acquisition they got from the Mariners, and he'd end the game. Close it out for him, stunning the Phillies at home, advancing to their second ever World Series, the last being in 2001 when the Diamondbacks beat the Yankees. And Marte won the NLCS MVP, obviously, with that hitting streak of his. So We had some World Series. We had some games. Friday, it was upon us. Two teams I guarantee no one had picked at the beginning of the year, but that's why you play the game. The Rangers and Diamondbacks. Arizona would send Zach Allen to the mound, while the Rangers went with Nathan Eovaldi. And, home side would open the scoring. Evan Carter double. Adolis Garcia would follow up with an RBI single of his own. 7 straight games registering an RBI, tying the second largest streak in postseason history, one off Ryan Howard's record. So after one, the Rangers led 2-0 in the third. Corbin Carroll would come in and tie the game with a 2-run triple before being brought home by Ketel Marte on a fielder's choice, giving the Diamondbacks the lead. That'd be short-lived because Gallen would walk Garver with the bases loading that tied the game. And then the following inning, the Diamondbacks would get the lead back off a Tommy Pham solo bomb. And then Marte would get another score on a double, keeping his postseason streak going. And then Garcia, he'd make a huge catch in the ninth to keep it a 2-run game, which was especially huge because Corey Seager would come up, hit a 2-run bomb off Sewell in the bottom of the ninth to tie the game at 5. And then, Garcia would get hit by a pitch and be pissed off, but he'd get his revenge in the 11th inning when he'd smash a solo home run, a walk-off home run to win the game. I don't know how the Rangers came back and won that. Just home runs, timely home runs, I guess. But that home run was his 5th straight game of the home run, second largest streak in postseason history, one behind Daniel Murphy's 6 he put up in 2015. And like white underwear on barbecue night, there were lots of streaks in that one. And then game 2, you had the Diamondbacks going with Merrill Kelly and the Rangers going with Jordan Montgomery. This game would not have the drama of game 1. 9-1 victory for the Diamondbacks. So we shift to Arizona for games 3 to 5, and there will be a World Series champion before the next episode of this podcast. So the way it's going for Arizona, you think I'd pick them? They're feeling it, but I've adamantly picked against them all postseason for some reason, and I'm going to do it again. So I have the Rangers. Rangers winning the World Series. Dolis Garcia's got a few more home runs in him. He's going to win the MVP. We'll see what happens with that. Champions League return this week. Big results. You had Bayern Munich beating Galatasaray, Inter beating Salzburg, Napoli beating Union Berlin, Arsenal winning in Seville against Sevilla, Real Madrid a close one in Braga, Real Sociedad against Benfica, and Man U a close one against Copenhagen with 2 unlikely heroes, Harry Maguire scoring a goal, and Onana, what's his name? But Onana made it save, stoppage time penalty, and big win for them. And then the other games, you had Dutch champs Feyenoord beating Lazio, Dortmund stunning Newcastle, Man City beating Young Boys, PSG thumping AC Milan, did not see that. Barcelona beating Shakhtar, Porto pounding Antwerp, and Celtic getting the surprise draw against Atletico. Smaller cousin of the Champions League, the Europa League, some big matches that jumped out. My West Ham losing to Olympiacos, Liverpool trounced to lose. Marseille got a big win against AEK Athens. Rennes over Panathinaikos. Wow, Grease Lightning in that name. And Brighton, they won 2-0 over Ajax. The EPL, the Premier League, we had some big games. Tottenham continued their hot play, beating Crystal Palace 2-1. Chelsea looked like a long distance racer who forgot to fill up. They could not finish. So many chances, no goals. They lost 2-0 to Brentford. Arsenal beat up on basement dwellers Sheffield United 5-0. Bournemouth beat Burnley. Wolves and Newcastle had an entertaining bout, but ended in a draw. My West Ham came off their loss to lose again to Everton. Brighton Fulham drew. Villa would beat newcomers Luton Town 3-1. And we had a Manchester derby. What color would Manchester be, red or blue? We had a very big, I don't know, I don't agree with the penalty call to give Man City a penalty. And Haaland would score, and he did. Change the game. Man City would win 3-0 in Old Trafford. Manchester will be blue for now. And Tottenham sit atop the Prem without a defeat yet this season, while Arsenal and Man City are right behind them. Arsenal still hasn't lost a game as well in the Prem. And then the Bundesliga, you had some excitement. I've got to shout out the Zone, or DAZN, whatever you call it. I was watching Goal Arena on Saturday. Fantastic. It's Red Zone, but Bundesliga. Phenomenal. You had Bayern Munich hosting Darmstadt, and they'd get a red card 4 minutes in. And then, not to be outdone, Darmstadt would get one in the 21st, and then the 41st. So you had 10 on 9 here. In the second half, there'd be goal city. Bayern Munich would end up winning by a touchdown, extra point, 8-0. And then Bremen, Werder Bremen would give Union Berlin their 10th straight loss. That's always tough. The crowd was, this Union Berlin supporters are still behind their team, even though they're struggling. Mönchengladbach picked up their first win of the year over Heidenheim. Hoffenheim shocked Stuttgart, who's been having a great start. Leipzig won their game. Leverkusen held on to a tough win at Freiburg. And a thriller on Sunday between Frankfurt and Dortmund. Looked like Frankfurt had it pulled off until Julian Brandt would equalize in the 82nd. So Xabi Alonso and his Bayern Leverkusen, they're top of the Bundesliga still. Bayern Munich's right behind them, but Bayern Leverkusen, good job, Xabi Alonso, the former Liverpool and Real Madrid greats, doing great things as a manager. And speaking of Real Madrid, let's go to La Liga. The spotlight was the El Clasico, Barcelona and Real Madrid. Good start for Barca with former Man City midfielder Ilkay Gundogan scoring 6 minutes in. And this game had a lot of tension. These guys don't like each other. The El Clasico has it's called the El Clasico for a reason. These are the two biggest teams in Spain. And Jude Bellingham would score on a beauty in the 68th. And then he'd score the winner in the 92nd, his 13th goal in 13 games for Real Madrid. You could not ask for a better start in Spain for him. Girona, they continued their hot start with a 1-0 win over Celta Vigo. And Atletico, they won in Alaves. Real Betis beat Osasuna, while Real Sociedad gave up a late one to settle for a draw against Rayo Vallecano. So Real Madrid and Girona still sit atop La Liga. Atletico are 3 points behind them with a game in hand, so they can be right with them. That Barcelona loss puts them 4 back of their rivals at the top of the league. In Italy, for the Serie A, it started with Juventus getting a big win over Hellas Verona, Torino beating Lecce, and then Sunday were the big matches. You had Marcus Thuram getting the lone goal in Inter Milan's win over Roma. Then you had 2 first-half AC Milan goals by Olivier Giroud get cancelled out by 2 goals in the second half by Napoli, by Politano and Raspadori. It ended in a draw. Tough game with them. And then in a thriller, you had Cagliari beating Frosinone 4-3. There's still games to go down Monday, but at the end of the week, you got Inter Milan leading Serie A with Juventus and Milan just behind them, with Napoli just in 4th. Then in Ligue 1 in France, who had Nice and Reims, they won close matches against Clermont Foot and Lorient. Then Lens continued their great play, beating Nats 4-0. PSG won a thrilling contest against Brest. Lille shocked leaders Monaco 2-0. Montpellier picked up a win in Toulouse as well, but the biggest talk of the weekend was between Marseille and Lyon, and it was postponed. Lyon's team bus was attacked with people throwing shit at the bus, shattering the windows, and some shard hit the manager. Fabio Grosso suffered a deep cut above his left eye that required stitches. Lyon didn't want to play. They're like, fuck this. So they just postponed the game. And 10 years ago, these fans had a big brawl that left 17 injured when the two teams happened to meet at a station, I guess. And ever since then, shit's been super wild. But wow, I was wondering why the game was postponed. I was reading, I was like, holy Jesus. So now Nice sit atop League One with the Monaco loss, who they now sit in 3rd, and PSG's in 2nd there. But I have to shout out some Canadian footy here real quick, as we're trying to grow the game in our country. You had Forge FC, who plays out of Hamilton, playing Cavalry FC, who plays out of Calgary. In the CPL Championship, the Canadian Premier League, you'd have a scoreless 90 minutes, which lead to extra time. The Cavalry would go ahead first with Mousset scoring, and you're like, we got it. But then the Forge would score, tie the game, and then they get a corner kick. And Borges with the Olympico is where he scored directly off the corner kick, put it right in the top corner. No one was on the back post. That was in the 111th minute. That wins the game. Forge are crowned the 2023 North Star Cup champions. First Canadian Premier League team to win the game at home because it was in Hamilton. It's their 4th win in 5 seasons. Congrats to the Forge as we grow the CPL in this country. The MLS playoffs have been underway. We'll have more info as that going into next week to see how those matches line up. The NHL, we had some reversing a decision on Pride Tape. Travis Dermott, little-known player on a 1-year, 2-way contract, rattled the cages, shook the world, and they reversed the decision. Good on him, showing the little guy, stick it to the big man. I never understood the canceling of that, or the banning of that. I understood they want to do, if we can't do it for them, we're not doing it for everybody, but I don't agree with that. I'm glad they changed their mind on it. Inclusivity. I can never say the word, but it's a good word. Joe Thornton, longtime legend, announced his retirement after 24 seasons in the NHL. You can book him into the Hall of Fame. But yeah, some great games in the NHL, especially Sunday. You had that Heritage Classic in Edmonton and Commonwealth Stadium. I love the outdoor games, and I think the Oilers do too because they needed to win, and they got Connor McDavid back, which definitely helps. But they picked up the win outside against Calgary 5-2. Maybe they can move all the games outside until they lose because they look good. And then speaking of looking good, defending champs, the Golden Knights, continuing the cruise. They still haven't lost in regulation. Neither of the Boston Bruins, though. So those two teams, they seem to be the cream of the crop, as Macho Man would put it. But I think it's still pretty wide open elsewhere throughout the league. You got the Leafs looking good. I know they lost no T to the Preds on the weekend, but other than that, they look pretty all right. You know, it's still early, but you have the Sens looking good at times. My Flyers look good at times. I think people are still trying to find their way. The Avalanche are looking really good. We expected that, and people are wondering how long are the Vancouver Canucks going to continue the good play. We'll see if that trend continues, but lots of excitement throughout the league. The NCAA. Big shock right out of the gate. Kansas beat rivals Oklahoma 38-33, snapping an 18-game losing streak against the school. You had USC having to come back to beat Cal 50-49. Tennessee beat Kentucky. Penn State beat down on Indiana. Florida State and Georgia won their games quite easily. Oregon destroyed Utah in what I thought would be a much closer game. Dion's Colorado lose another one, this time to the Bruins, UCLA. There was a targeting call on Shiloh Sanders that got a lot of talk. It was pretty brutal. I don't agree with it. I don't know what else he was supposed to do there, but refs doing ref things, I guess. Arizona surprised the Beavers of Oregon State with their win, and Air Force continue to win. But out of my college picks last week, I only had one wrong, which was Colorado. Thanks, Dion. But next week, look out for Cal and Oregon, Missouri, Georgia, Washington, USC, Oregon State, Colorado, UCLA, Arizona, Oklahoma, and OK State. And the big one, LSU and Bama. And in those games, I have the Ducks, Georgia, Washington, Colorado, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Roll Tide. F1, big hype in Mexico City, and the home crowd was hoping to see their guy, Sergio Perez, have a great race. Then the ultimate buzzkill, right at the start of the race, Verstappen split those Ferraris right off the start. And then, Perez is like, I'm going to go around on the outside here, contact with the Ferrari. He'd get some air, launching him into the. Not launching, I mean, it propelled him a little bit airborne, but it would also propel him out of the race. Disappointment for Checo. You could see him hitting the wheel in the pits. You could hear the disappointment in the crowd. That's their guy. He's the guy, the Mexican guy. But tough for him. But that was about all the tough for Red Bull. Verstappen would win again. Record breaking 16th win of the season. Total dominance. Lewis Hamilton would have a real good drive to get in the second place, and Charles Leclerc would finish out the podium. Lando Norris starting 17th, finishing 5th. Hell of a drive for him. Danny Ricciardo finishing 7th. Pretty good drive for him as well. And we're already racing again next weekend. We're back going at it in Brazil for the Brazilian Grand Prix. And another thing I mentioned last episode, I didn't get to watch it as much, but thanks to the internet and highlights, you had the Rugby World Cup, the Rugby World Cup Grand Final, and it went down between rivals South Africa and New Zealand. It's always about these two, it seems, and South Africa would win it close, 12-11, winning their second World Cup in a row. So congrats to South Africa. And you're like, dude, what's up? You're all about basketball. Where's the basketball? I did it again. Ren City went out and put way too much shit together for 1 week in the podcast. So later this week, I'm thinking Thursday morning, I'll be dropping it. It'll be a week of the whole basketball shit there, just of what I had saw coming in, what's actually happening, and what's going forward. Kind of the ghosts of all Christmas pasts and future there. We'll see what's up for week 1, and then hopefully I can compile it into a smaller data for the episode, but if not, I'll do it again next week. We'll see, because there's been some sick balling going on with this. Ugh, there's been so much ball. I've been consuming it all like some kind of sponge. Yeah, sponges do that. But loving it. But from that basketball segue into short, like Halloween's upon us. It's in a few days here, so ghouls and goblins, get your hands up in the air. I've been feeling under the weather a little as late. Missed some work this week. Just been feeling pretty run down, so we just took it easy. no Halloween shenanigans for us, missing out on some of it. And then I started thinking, younger Ren City was an animal, didn't care about health, and went out. And when I was thinking, Halloween as an old teenager becoming an adult, what were things it was about? Halloween was about partying. It was about drugs. It was about skanky costumes, right? Maybe I was in them, probably not. But that kind of leads me to this because everybody's like, pot's a gateway drug, and everyone's like, how can one thing lead to another? Suddenly you're rolling up bills for party games when you just went to buy some pot. But I think a big part of that was just before legalization. Some of these places you get referred to or you join acquaintance to, pretty mind-boggling thinking back to like where you went and how sketchy these places were for the smallest amount of pot, and like the people you were buying it from were definitely on more than pot. So I think that's part of the gateway dynamic. You literally walk through a gate on your way because it was fucked up. I remember one place, let's call it in the hood in Saskatoon, not in our hood, a different hood, but one person we'd go up to, she'd always disappear for a while, and her like four different children would pop. It was so weird, like thinking about it, like as an older adult now, like oh my goodness. But and all the kids were different ethnicities too, so she had a different dad for each one, and she kept it diverse. So good on her, no segregation in that house. But it was pot, and you're a youngin, and you're like, this is pot. I guess I'll go through with this, So I'm a big fan of the stores now. You don't have to deal with any of that shit, and you gateway to heavier shit, as I said. So you weren't buying pot anymore. You're looking to buy other stuff, and then this stuff might be named as a cola, but we went to an ATM one night, and as we were at the ATM, we heard other people, total random people, talking about this drug, and we're like, "Hey, Coke, hey, you guys getting some?" They're like, "Yeah, we're getting some now," and I'm like, "Oh, well, let's jump in with them." I mean, these guys jet sauce take out money. We don't know who the fuck they are. We jump in this little ass car of theirs, take us to this trailer park. We get in there. These people are just tweaking out in there. They're watching the original Star Wars trilogy, the OG stuff, none of the Disney Plus stuff. And yeah, everybody's like cheering as these people come through the door with the gifts and everything. And yeah, they start opening it up and dispersing it around. It looked like a drugged out share circle. And one guy, he's like, "Hey, let me throw it on the spoon here." And he's like, "Look at it cook on a spoon. You don't even need a lighter." And I was like, we gotta get the fuck out of here. So once you heard that, so yeah, we did not want any part of this. They're like, "Hey, you need a ride?" And I'm like, "Nah, we good." We went outside and we were way the fuck away from where we were staying. But yeah, we did not want to be there. You couldn't just have a transaction in those days. It was like if you want a drug, you gotta play it out. You gotta stick it out to earn it, I guess. It was fucked up. Very sketchy scenes. I'm so much happier you can just go to stores now. Shout out to True Dope and Potty Mouth in Saskatoon here, two stores that are awesome. Might as well shout them out. But yeah, obviously I've lived my wild life and lived to tell it. But if you're doing drugs now, please be safe. Get the kits you need for overdoses. Like I don't encourage drug use, but people, I'm not gonna tell anyone what to do with their life. But if you do, get the kits, be prepared. It can help, it'll save your life. But also, if you're like, fuck, I'm doing drugs already and I don't want to do them anymore, seek help, reach out. Today could be the day you stop. If you don't know what to do, reach out to me. Shit, I stopped. I don't know how I did it. It was back in the day, and just like, let's stop. We stopped. Boom. So if I can help in any way, maybe I can. But regardless, that's episode 34 in the books. I'll at your boy, as I mentioned. NBA thing will be dropping out later. I'm gonna have to get that going again. So, like I said, thanks again for joining, guys, and take care. Ren City out.